Same deal. We begin graphing by finding the most important point, the vertex. The vertex is a coordinate. It's an x value and a y value. You find that vertex x value using the formula x equals negative b over 2 times a. And when you use it, please use parentheses instead of b and a. That way you could safely plug in your b value of 4 and your a value of 1/3. And obviously the c value of 12 you're not using on the formula. It doesn't have any c values. So let's plug in the b value of 4 and the a value of 1/3. Okay. So this is really, really ugly, but let's go with it. We have on top a negative 4. And on the bottom, we have 2 times 1/3. And I hope we remember that when you multiply a number times a fraction, you could put that number over a 1. That way it looks like a fraction. And when you multiply it with another fraction, you just multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. So 2 times 1 is 2. You're going to have a 2 up here. And then on the bottom, 1 times 3 is 3. Okay, by the way, you could technically just type in 2 parentheses 1/3 in a calculator and it'll give you your final answer, right? Or you could type in this whole thing in a calculator and it'll give you your final x value of your vertex. But I want to show you without a calculator. So we have we have a negative 4 divided by 2/3. So what we need to do to really understand this is write it horizontally instead of vertically. Negative 4 divided by 2/3. And I hope we remember back in semester 1, we learned that when you divide by a fraction, it's really the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of the fraction. So you flip the 2/3 and it becomes 3/2. So you could say that you have the negative 4. You should say you have negative 4, but instead of division, you're going to put multiplication. And instead of 2/3, you're going to flip 2/3 and make it 3/2. Okay. And then this you could do on a calculator, or you could do it by hand by saying, okay, 4 over 1 times 3 over 2. So negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, and 2 times 1 is 2. So your x value is really negative 6. Again, if you don't want to struggle, you could just type this in, negative, open parenthesis, 4, close parenthesis, the division bar, 2, open parenthesis, 1 over 3, in parenthesis, close, hit enter. It'll give you negative 6 as an answer. That negative 6 is your vertex x value. How do you find the y value? You plug it into the original. The original equation says y equals 1/3 x squared plus 4x plus 12. And of course, we are plugging in the x value of negative 6 into those parentheses. And when you do the exponents first, you get a positive 36. And of course, you're going to be multiplying that by 1/3. And that's easy to do because if you put that over 1, you could actually do 36 on top divided by 3 on the bottom. That will be a 12, right? Or if you multiplied 1 times 36, it's 36. 3 times 1, it's 3. And 36 over 3, that is 12. Or you could type it in the calculator. Either way, you're going to get 12 for that first number right here. And then you have a positive 4 times a negative 6. That's a negative 24, right? Positive 4 times a negative 6, negative 24. And of course, you could bring down that plus 12. So we have a... from left to right, 12 take away 24, that's negative 12, and negative 12 plus 12 that comes down, that'll be 0. So our vertex has a y value of 0. So let's plot that point, the location negative 6, 0. That would be negative 6, and you don't go up or down, that's right on the x-axis itself, that's negative 6, 0. Now you need more points. You could use an input-output table, but I recommend using the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. However, because our a value is 1/3, I'm going to have to modify the outputs, the 1, the 4, and the 9. I'm going to have to modify the outputs of the original pattern by that new a value of 1/3. So I'm going to multiply the 1 by 1/3, and we'll get 1/3. I'm going to multiply the 4 times 1/3, and we'll get 4/3. And I'm going to multiply the 9 times 1/3. And on a calculator, 9 times 1/3, that's like 9 divided by 3. That'll be 3. Okay? So this does look ugly. We know the vertex. We need more points. So if I want more points, I could go 1 over and 1/3 of the way up. 1 over 1/3 of the way up. But I can't do that on Quizizz. It'll only go complete units, not 1/3 of a unit. So when you try to get your point and move it over 1 and 1/3 of the way up, it's going to skip right there. So you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to be going back and forth right there. So let's use, and 2 4/3, it still won't work. If you go 2 over and 4/3 of the way up, it's still gonna not let you plot it there. So go to a nice one like this one, 3 over and 3 up. So that one you could do 3 over and 3 up, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and put a dot right there, and you're good to go. All you got to do now is map it over to the other side of the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is a line, that invisible line that goes right through the vertex, and just map it over to the other side. So if your dot is 1, 2, 3 units away, go 1, 2, 3 units away this way. And that's all it's asking for, 3 points. Those are 3 points. That's our parabola. Of course, if it were on paper, you graph it. Notice that that parabola is a little wider than usual. That's because the a value is closer to 0. The closer it gets to 0, the wider it gets. The bigger it gets, the more narrow it gets, the more vertically stretched. Anyway, I hope this helps. One of the questions is going to have a parabola graphed for you, and it'll ask you for the vertex, right? But on this video, I'm going to explain not only just the vertex, but other questions that I may ask you. So what is a vertex? That would be this location right here. The vertex is the maximum point or the minimum point, depending on if it opens up or down. So the vertex right there, the location from the origin is -4 on the x, -9 on the y. So the vertex is -4, -9. That's pretty easy to do if you see the graph. But I could also ask you for the, let's say, axis of symmetry. And the axis of symmetry is x equals what? Anybody? X equals the x value of your vertex. Remember, the axis of symmetry is the vertical line that passes right through that vertex value, right? And in order for you to get a vertical line, you have to put x equals in front of x equals and then the number that you want it to go through, and it does go through -4. So technically, the axis of symmetry is simply x equals the x value of your vertex. So you would type that in to get full credit if I asked you for the axis of symmetry. Now, if I asked you for the range, or how about this, for the domain? The domain or what? What is the domain? X. X equals all our numbers. How about the range? Y is greater than or equal to the y value of your vertex, -9. Okay. See, domain are your x values, and as you can see, x is the number line going left and right. So it does go to the left and to the right forever, even though it looks like it goes up, but it always goes out and up forever. So it does go to the left and to the right forever. That's why the domain's x equals all real numbers. Now the range are the y values, and this parabola obviously doesn't exist at -11 or at -10, but it starts existing at -9. It exists at -9 and above. That's why the range is y is greater than or equal to -9. Okay, so I could also ask you for the y-intercept. The y-intercept is simply the location of where it crosses the y-axis. Algebraically, all you have to do is set x equal to 0 and solve, but you could actually see that it crosses the y-axis right there at that location, which is the location 0, -5. All right, so this is one of the easier questions. Let's move on to something that's a little more challenging, where I ask you to actually graph a parabola. Whenever we have an equation like this and they ask us to graph it, you always start with the most important point, that vertex. So I would actually write down the word vertex and understand that the vertex is a location on the xy plane. It's a coordinate. And in order to find that coordinate, you're going to use a vertex formula, x equals -b over 2 times a. And whenever you use that formula, always replace the b and the a with parentheses, so you could easily plug in the b value and the a value right here and right there. So what is our b value? Our b value, if you look at the original, the a value is -1/2, the b value is -4, and the c value is not even in the formula, so who cares? But the c value is -7. Anyway, the b value is -4. Make sure that you include the sign that's in front. You can't just say 4, it's actually a -4. So inside the parentheses, you have a -4. And the a value is -1/2. So the a value is -1/2. So I do recommend using a calculator, especially if you're confused with multiplying fractions. But up on top, it's super easy. -4, that's a +4. And when you look at the bottom with the calculator, 2 times -1/2 is -1. or positive times a negative is a negative, and 2 times 1/2 is 1. So our x value is 4 divided by -1, which is -4. Okay, so our vertex x value is -4. We still need the y value. And whenever you find, or whenever you have the x value, -4, how do we get this? Because we use a formula, x equals, and that's what x equals. That's what x equals, right? Whenever you have an x and you want the y, all you have to do is plug in the x value into the location where the x's are at. So I would rewrite this whole thing, but with parentheses here, and then I would substitute the -4 into the parentheses. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to rewrite it. Y equals -1/2 x squared minus 4x minus 7. Now, in the parentheses, we are plugging in that x value that we found out with the formula -4. Then we're going to do the math. So if you tend to make mistakes a lot doing this math, you might as well use a calculator. If not, just take it one step at a time. Exponents first, right? -4 times itself. -4 times -4 is positive 16. Then you'd have to multiply that positive 16 by that -1/2 that's in front. So what is -1/2 of 16? That would be a -8, okay? And then moving on over here, a -4 times a -4, that's a positive 16. And then of course that -7, we're just bringing it down. Then you go from left to right. From left to right, -8 plus 16, that is positive 8. And then positive 8, bring down the -7, positive 8 minus 7, the answer is 1, okay? So what is this answer of 1? It's really y equals. So we just found that the y value is 1. The y value of what? The y value of the vertex, right? We have the x, we found the y. So our vertex is -4, 1, and that is the most important point on the whole parabola. That is the maximum value. I know that already because it opens down because the a value is negative. So let's go to that most important point of -4, positive 1. So -4, positive 1 would be right here. And of course on Quizizz, you're going to have to just plot one of those points at -4, positive 1, and you would leave it right there, okay? By the way, on Quizizz, if you have the right answer, but you don't have this work on the paper that you turn in, you don't get full credit. So make sure that you have the formula, that you show the work to the formula, that you plug in that x value to find y. That's the only way to get credit. Even if you have the right answer, if you don't have the right work, you don't get credit. So anyway, we need more points. So we could use an input-output table, an XY table, and plug in some numbers and pull out some answers. But what I recommend is using the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. Give me one second. Let me just do this real quick. Okay, so the pattern that I want you to use is the one I asked you to memorize, 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. However, this pattern only works when your a value is 1. And in this case, you could clearly see that the a value is -1/2. So what you're going to have to do is modify the pattern, actually modify the outputs of the pattern, right? Your inputs are the left column. Your outputs are the right column. So you're going to have to modify the 1, the 4, and the 9 by this new a value of -1/2. So you're going to have to multiply that 1 by -1/2. You're going to have to multiply the 4 by -1/2 and multiply the 9 by -1/2. So 1 times -1/2 is -1/2, or -0.5 if you want to write it as a decimal. And 4 times -1/2 is -2. And 9 times -1/2 is -4.5, -4.5, okay? So this is your new modified pattern. The pattern 1 over, but instead of 1 over and 1 up, you're going to go 1 over and halfway down. So from the vertex, you're going to go 1 over and halfway down. But when you actually try to do that on Quizizz, 1 over halfway down, it's not going to let you put a dot here. It's going to either jump to there or there. So it doesn't let you go halfway. So that part of the pattern didn't really help us on Quizizz. If you were graphing on paper, then yeah, for sure, you could put a dot right there. Okay, 1 over halfway down right there. But since it's on Quizizz, we can't use this first part of the pattern of 1 over halfway down. So let's go to the next part of the pattern. From the vertex, go 2 over and 2 down. That does work. You go 2 over and 1, 2 down, and you put a dot right there. Okay. And then from there, you would go back to the vertex, and instead of 3 over and 9 up, you're going to go 3 over and 4.5 down. But you're not going to be able to do that because when you go 1, 2, 3, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a half down, it doesn't work. It won't let you put it halfway. So I believe on this question, it says plot 3 points. So all you have to do is reflect that one other point over to the other side of the axis of symmetry. Okay, so if this point is 2 units away from the axis of symmetry, go 2 units this way and plot the point right there, and you'll have your 3 points that it's asking you to graph. Now, of course, if it were pencil and paper, you could have actually done 1 over and halfway down, 1 over and halfway down. That would have been right here, halfway down. And then you could have gone 2 over 2 down. We did 2 over 2 down. You could have gone 3 over 4.5 down. 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4.5. So that'd be right there at negative 3.5. And if you map them over to the other side, it would be right there at the halfway point and right there at the halfway point. But anyways, this would be your parabola if you were doing it on paper. But right here on Quizizz, all it's asking for is 3 points. So you just plot 1, 2, 3, hit submit, and you'll get full credit. Make sense?